It's GT Divide Podcast coming at you with another episode on this great Monday night in record mode 100%. I appreciate you guys for continuing to rock with me as I continue to grow. As we continue to grow, me and the team, we'll have the team back on here soon with another episode. We had a pretty good one last week. But today I'm going to talk about emasculation of men. When a spouse emasculates their husband or significant other. I know you guys got different terms for it, so I want to make sure I'm politically correct. So what does it mean to emasculate? Deprive a man of his male role or identity, or make someone or something weaker or less effective, right? So deprive a man of his male role or identity. So there's two things there. Male role, which is kind of includes his identity, or separate his identity itself. Make something weaker or less effective. We're gonna underline the word weaker as we talk today. So, what are some ways that women emasculate their husbands? One, withhold respect or kindness. This is not in any particular order. This is just going through the list real quick. Complain about his job or salary. Keep repeating how childish he is. Mistrust his abilities to do things on his own. So, like, tell him to do something and then tell him that he's doing it wrong, essentially. Ask him for help. Tell him he's doing it wrong. Nag him or boss him around. Offer him unsolicited advice, which I never thought about that one. That's actually an interesting one. Criticize how he spends his time. Badmouth him to your friends. So those are some things you do to emasculate your husband. So what does it mean to break a man down to his core? A good example of emasculation is Will Smith. What he did is because he got broke down to his core. And so a weaker man attacks another man for saying something about his woman. At the end of the day, me as a man, yeah, you'll protect your woman, but you also got to understand the substance and where you're at. You got to understand where you're at on a different status, right? You're in front of the whole world, whereas behind the scenes, things can get done a little bit differently, right? And so an emasculated man is controlled by his woman, essentially. And emasculation is not about making a guy in touch with his feelings, as people would say, well, you got to get in touch with your feelings or you got to be vulnerable. That's not what emasculation is, right? Those are methods to emasculate, but that's not what emasculation actually is. It's about power, essentially. It's about gaining power over your significant other, your husband, into where it gives you control. And so what you have to understand is that when you take power over the man, and now he's lost his identity, he's a weaker he feels like he's a weaker person, his role is gone, and then you expect him to pick the pieces back up later on. It's kind of hard to pick the pieces back up. Typically, when somebody gets emasculated, they stay emasculated. Like, they don't just gather back up. Unless they get around the right people, it typically doesn't happen. And so what happens is men will get emasculated, and then they'll get kicked to the curb because then it switches, and it's like, well, I want a masculine man now. And so, boop, he's booted, next guy, right? And that's the problem. And emasculated men end up divorced. Let's be honest. You get broke down to your core. Will and Jada Pinkett Smith. Let's use them as an example. Granted, they've been split up for a long time. They don't live together. The whole August Alsina thing came out, and the entanglement. And their relationship is the epitome of an emasculated man with a feminist woman. They're the epitome of what it looks like. That's exactly what played out in front of us, in front of our eyes. And so what happens is he ends up being weaker. He became weaker. His role was taken away. His identity is gone. So now Will Smith, he may have his identity in film, right, in the realm of film, in the realm of movies, but in the realm of his relationship, his identity is gone. Dude has no say on what the heck goes on. His kids can do whatever they want to. They can run rampant. His wife can do whatever she wants to. She runs rampant. They stick together probably to kind of save face in front of everybody else, and for financial reasons more than likely. It's typically why it happens. But dude has been emasculated down to his core. He does not know who he is anymore. right? And a man who gets down to this part, you never know what they're going to do. You never know what they're capable of. You never know what they're going to do because they've been broken down to the very most fine piece where there's nothing left, right? Now he's less effective, right? He's not filming a whole lot of movies after that slap. Weaker. He became weaker. His role's gone. His identity's gone. And you run rampant. And typically, like I said, this happens when you have an extreme feminist that you're married to. And you have to understand that feminism is a war on men. It's taking away men's power. Like, what it means to be a man is powerful things. And when you take away that power, now you essentially take away what he is. And once you take away what a man is, when a man has nothing left, you don't know what he's going to do, right? And so he's controlled by his wife. Because if you think about it, Will Smith was laughing until Jada Pinkett looked at him. She looked at him, and he's got to go up there and do something now. That is an emasculated man to his core. He is broken down to the last piece. He doesn't know who he is. His identity is 100% gone. And this happens in pieces. This happens in over time. Typically, this is not something that just happens overnight. Like, these things happen over and over and over again, and you'll see it in passive aggressiveness. Is typically how this thing comes down. You will have a passive aggressive spouse, somebody who's very passive about stuff, but they're talking shit on you passively. They're disrespecting you passively. They're complaining about you passively, right? They're basically calling you a kid, not a parent, not an adult, passively. Listen to what they're saying. Listen to how they say it. That'll tell you everything that you need to know about where their mindset is and what they're thinking, right? And we have to understand that as men is that we have to protect ourselves against that, because when that starts happening, two things can happen, right? Well, three things can happen. We're going to say three things can happen. One, you get completely emasculated. You become the next Will Smith, and you slap another dude on stage. Like, that's in honor of this woman who came out with an entanglement with another man. Like, that's who you slapping people for. So you essentially slapping people for that. And so you slap another person on stage, and now your value has come down, right? Your values come down. That was the plan all along. That was her plan all along, to bring his value down. Now his value down. Right? So now she has more control. He did that action, right? And we all saw him do that action, and we know it was because of her that he did that action. So now it seems on the outside like she has the power when she actually does have the power 100% on the inside too, right? So that's one thing. I mean, you can go down to the Will Smith level, completely broke all the way down, nothing left. Two, you get lucky, conversations happen, you fix some things, she fixes some things, you guys end up on even ground. You get even footing. Rare. That's a rare one. That doesn't happen that often. Third one is you stand up for yourself. It causes rift in your relationship. You end up divorced. Because eventually a guy is going to do one or two things in a situation. This is for the ladies. He's either going to allow you to break him all the way down, or he's going to fight you tooth and nail, and you ain't breaking nothing down. And so them the two things that happen. And so there's a decision that has to be made when you get to this point. It's like a crossroads, right? And so you look at these things and look at the way that you break a man down. And it even goes deeper than this. Like, these are just some basic reasons. There's a lot of other things, underlying things. And like I said, passive aggressive people typically, that's one of the main ways that it gets done, is the passive aggressive things, the passive aggressive remarks, the passive aggressive things that are said, things that are thrown out there, being undermined. How many of you guys out there have been undermined, right? Somebody undermines so you want to do something, you say something, then you get undermined, right? Often. What about you do something and somebody doesn't agree with you, and so now it's an argument, and you end up going their way every single time. And you notice it consistently. You end up going their way every single time. It's a power struggle. And typically, women that emasculate men are feminists. It is a goal in mind to be able to bring you down to a certain level, right? So if a woman knows that she married up, she's going to naturally need to bring you down to her, so that way she can feel good about herself. So she'll emasculate you, where you started off up here, now you're down here, right? And you let it happen because you're the happy wife, happy life people, and so you're letting it happen, and then you lose your identity. And let me tell you something: losing your identity is the worst thing that can happen to a man, is to lose himself. Lose yourself chasing or trying to figure out or trying to fix. At some point you got to realize that what's broken you can't fix, right? You can't fix your partner. You can only fix yourself. And letting yourself go and then losing your identity is not a way to fix yourself. You can't fix yourself in this realm, in this type of thing right here. So understand that. But like I said, emasculation is about power. And the power struggle that happens in a relationship, which there's a normal power struggle that will naturally happen in a relationship. When you have a healthy relationship, there's still going to be a tug of war, right? But it's not so much about power, right? It's about balance. When you're tug of war and you're kind of staying here, it's about balance. Now, when you get to tug of war and you're shifting and he's shifting and you're shifting and it's a shift back and forth, that is not about balance. That's about power. And so you have to understand the difference between the two when you get into the tug of war, the battles in the relationship. Is it about balance? Are we trying to balance things out? Or is it about power, right? And you can go a long time in a relationship and you can have one partner that shifts and always has to shift the other way consistently, and then that partner puts their foot down one day, and then the other partner's like, wait a minute, like this is uncomfortable for me because I'm used to this shift always happening whenever I say something or whenever I want to do something, right? You may not agree, because as couples, you're not going to be perfectly aligned. You're not going to have every agreement on everything. There's always going to be some sort of conflict or some sort of thing that you have to work on, but you have to know the difference between somebody that is trying to get balance with you and somebody that is wanting power over you. Two separate, totally different things. And so when you emasculate somebody, you break them down to their very core. They lose their identity. They lose their role. There's no telling what they'll do because there's nothing left. Because at the end of the day, you can strip away if you strip away a man's role and his identity, he has nothing, right? And so I think that men, we have to be careful to watch for the signs of emasculation, right? There are signs, there are subtle things that happen when you're in the battle and you're in the war in the relationship, and you start to notice that, hey, I'm starting to feel myself slipping, and you will. Your mind, your body, your heart, your soul will tell you, hey, dude, like you're changing, and you probably need to start taking a look at some things. The problem is a lot of us, because we get in these situations, we get stuck, right? Because the happy wife, happy life is ringing in your head. So you're like, well, dang, well, she's happy. So even if I'm miserable as heck, she's happy. So we're good. That's good. That's good enough for me. But what you don't realize is that there is something going on inside you too, because as you change, eventually you hit that bottom. And when you hit that bottom, when you hit the rock bottom of emasculation, where you just kind of don't have no identity at all, nothing to lose, then you get to a point where you start to resent. And then when you start to resent, then it leads to resentment of your partner. And then next thing you know, you guys are fighting all the time. There's no love, no affection. Conversations don't happen. You sit at the table, you can have dinner with each other, not talk to each other. That's when you've hit rock bottom. When you have a man who's emasculated so far down to the bottom that he don't even know which way is up. But we're going to talk about the types of women that do this to men and why they do this to men. So you understand what emasculation is, right? Depriving a man of his role or identity, or you make something weaker or less effective. We talked about some of the ways that it happens. We talked about feminism's effect on emasculation and why most of the time, and you're going to see is one of the types of women that emasculates their men is going to be a feminist woman. You're going to see that at the top. And so, heck, we could start there, a feminist woman. I think that a lot of women there's a conglomerate of women that are feminists that probably are in denial on being that, but I think you have to look at actions, right? Actions speak louder than words. If a woman wants to control everything, wants to be in charge of everything, the feminist movement has definitely injected her with something, and there's something left there because women like that become competitive, so they're competing with you. They're not on the same team as you, and you can feel it. Like a lot of times you get into a relationship and you're with somebody for a long period of time, you can feel the competitiveness where it's they have to always one up you, or you have to one up, or you feel like you have to one up them. If you feel like you have to one up your partner, you need to start listening and paying attention to what's being said, because obviously your body's telling you something is off. And when you realize something is off and pay attention to it, then you can actually be able to catch stuff, right? And you have to be paying attention. As men, we have to be, so I say it in my Christian men's podcast, I have my Christian men's stream. We talk about being immovable and standing in the faith, right? And when you have a feminist woman inside the house, it's hard to be immovable and stand in the faith because when you stand in the faith and you're immovable, you'll get called stuff. You'll be resented for how you believe or how you feel, and then you'll get shamed or you'll get blamed. Which a huge thing with feminist women is that they don't take responsibility for any damn thing. It's always somebody else's fault. The only thing they will take responsibility for is my body, my choice. That's it. Only thing they'll take responsibility. Anything else, no. Not taking responsibility for anything else, right? It's not our fault. It's men's fault. Men did this to us. This is the reason why. You would think that feminist women are oppressed or something, like they've been slaves. And I'm black, so my ancestors, my history will tell you about what it actually means to be slaves. And these feminist chicks out here ain't never even been close to what slavery actually is. So if they give you that load of BS, tell them shut up. It's ridiculous. But that's what they act like. They act like men are because for you to be oppressed, you have to have an oppressor, right? And for feminists, they act like they're oppressed. So who is their oppressor? Men, right? So men are their oppressor to them. That's who they put out there. And so when you get in a relationship with a person like this, you marry a person like this, you can expect to be feminized and emasculated because they want control. A lot of these women want control. It's about power. The feminist movement wasn't about equality. It was about power. Power over men. And I can go biblical with that, but I'm gonna spare y'all that because we'll sit on here and talk for 45 minutes to an hour if I go biblical with that. Insecure women, another conglomerate of women to do this. They're insecure because if your woman is insecure, they feel like they have to bring you down to the so instead of building themselves up, like if they see you on this level and they see themselves down here, they feel like they got to bring you down as opposed to going up, right? And so that's where emasculation comes from, because a number one way to bring a man down is to take away what his role is or to take away his identity. And so it's a scheme that some of them don't know that they're doing. Most of them do, because you have to consciously make the decision to emasculate a man. Like, to do these things is a conscious decision that you have to make, because what you'll see, and the crazy thing is what you'll see is you'll be in a relationship with a feminist or an insecure woman, and they will emasculate you. They will disrespect you, complain about you, but there will be other men in their lives, and they won't disrespect or complain about them. And so that's a decision that was made by that particular person to emasculate this person over here and leave everybody else. Everybody else gets spared that rod, right? And so you have to be careful, because insecure women, this is what they do. This is how they operate. They operate on the I need to have power. And then they also, so they call it mate guarding is a term that they use. So you'll be, man, I'm gonna work out, and they'll be like, man, you don't need to work out today, or they'll give you the extra scoop of food, right? Try to put a little lbs on you, make you little lbs on you. It's mate guarding, right? Insecure women do, and these are defense mechanisms, right? The emasculation, to me, when it comes to an insecure woman, it starts out as a defense mechanism, but the power that they get is addicting, and so they continue to push it until they get to a point where it's like, dude done came all the way off the pedestal or the mantle, and it's no longer king and queen, it's queen and peasant. And so now you got a peasant up underneath you who's supposed to be your husband, but he a peasant now because you didn't banished him from the throne, essentially. Another common women to do this is highly religious women will emasculate their men. And you ask why? Why would a highly religious woman want to emasculate her man when the Bible tells a man to be masculine? I thought you were going to ask that, so I got an answer for your question. Because the feminization of the church. So the church is feminized, and so it has put out, it's made it harder for men in relationships, men in marriages. Three reasons. I'm gonna give you guys three. I always start on like two reasons, but no, it's three reasons. Number one is since the church is now created for women, right? Men don't go, and so one way to emasculate a man who doesn't go to church with you is to talk about him not going to church with you. So now you're trying to demonize his beliefs while trying to push your beliefs over the top. And this happens a lot of times in homes where the man will just kind of go along with. And so if the man believes differently than the wife, typically what happens is what the wife wants is what the family's going to do, right? That's typically what happens most of the time. This, my friends, is an emasculation tactic. It is one of the subtle passive-aggressive ways that you get emasculated, because then you don't have a choice in what the family does, right? You can't be a man. You can't. So that takes away that takes away your role, and it takes away your identity. So that's one way that is done. And the crazy thing is that the church puts a stamp on this thing and says it's okay. Two, you have to think about how a church is ran, right? And so a woman who is insecure, who's emasculating her husband, will go show respect to another man up here, but won't show respect to her husband. That right there is slap in your face emasculation, like slap in your face, like showing that she can respect a man, but she just doesn't want to respect you. That's a choice. And the problem is that, again, churches put a stamp on it, good to go. And so they're behind that. They're cool with that. Me, if I was a pastor of a church, I would tell every woman in the church, if you don't have respect for your husband, you can't have respect for me. You can't have respect for the word. You can't have respect for the Lord because you don't have respect for your husband. Because that's godly right there. That's what he commands you to do in the first place. But pastors won't say that, because if you ruffle the female feathers because the church is so feminized, you'll lose the 60 to 70% of your congregation. And then you'll be left with the little 30 to 40%. And that's not a lot that don't pay the bills, right? So in order for them to pay the bills, they can't say that. They got to stay away from telling that truth right there. That's the second way. Third way is so what will happen is they'll have a unrealistic view on marriage. Churches, religious people get an unrealistic view on marriage when they should actually have the most realist view on marriage that there is. But the problem is that when you separate the word from what people want, and they get what they want but not within the word, then you don't actually get what it is. You get whatever they want it to be. So who's in control of that? Well, the person. The beauty in that's in the eye of the beholder. And so what happens is the Bible will tell you what to expect in marriage, or what to expect from a husband, or what to expect from a wife. But the problem is that highly religious women will get inside their head and they'll be like, well, this is what a husband's supposed to be. And it won't even have crap to do with the Bible. Like, the Bible will tell you something, but then they'll tell you something different. But because of the religion and like the gun-ho for religion, that puts a man between a rock and a hard place, where now he feels like he can't live up to, right? That's another way to emasculate a man, is to have a high standard that can be unattainable, right? Or you say, this is what I want, knowing that this is what you have. So if your spouse tells you that they want something totally different than what you are, my friends, that is a form of emasculation right there. That is a tactic that is old as time. It's a tactic that's older than some people's bunions on their feet, but it's old. And so that tactic is one that is used a lot in Christian circles. And so, because you would think that, if in the Bible doesn't like divorce, but the divorce rate in the church is pretty high, It should be 0%, but it's up there in like the 30 to 40 range, I believe, somewhere in there. A tick less than what is outside the church, but still too close to that, right? And I think that's part of the problem is that when you tell the truth, the expectation is true. When you don't tell the truth, the expectation is not true. And so those are the three types of women that you can see the emasculation from the most. And so you ask, how do we fix this as men? Well, as men, I'm going to flip the page on my notes here. As men, for us to be able to fix this thing, first of all, we have to recognize when it's happening. Recognize when it's happening and be able to address it. You don't have to address it in a manner that is demeaning or mean or rude or anything like that, but address it. Hey, like, I understand how you feel about this, but this is how I feel about this. Because what will happen is you come so far down the rabbit hole of emasculation, you're at the bottom, then you have to lash out to get your way at the top. So now you're freaking just clawing and trying to do whatever you can to get back up, and you see the light. So you're doing whatever you can to get to the light, and you don't want to get to that point, because when you get to that point, it makes it harder to be able to get back up, right? When the hole's dug and you're so deep down in there, it's hard to get back up. And so, number one, address it. 2, stand firm. As a man, love yourself. Love who you are, who you were created to be. If you can do that, then nothing can falter you. Nothing can change you. Nothing can misguide you or misrepresent you. And so I feel like we have to get back to doing that. We have to get back to loving ourselves as men. Society has told us not to love ourselves. Society has told women not to love us. Society has told us that men aren't good parents. We don't need men in society. Women can just run society by themselves and just make babies by themselves. I don't know how they're going to do that, because you got to get the sperm from somewhere, but that's what society is saying. The value of man is decreased, right? But just because the society says that doesn't mean that that's what it has to be. So as men, we have to stand up. We have to stand firm, right? We have to protect each other, protect one another. Talk to your buddies, see how they're doing. Your buddies in relationships, check on them. Ask them what's going on. As men, I feel like we should do a better job of talking about our relationship status with other men, how we're doing, what we're going through, the struggles that we're seeing. Women talk about it all the time, but for some reason, it's like a man just can't talk about it. We need to get comfortable talking about it, right? Because you never know what you can learn from another man, right? Older men impart wisdom on the young. So for me, being in my 30s, I can talk to teenagers about, hey, this is what you're going to experience. People in their early 20s, hey, this is what you're going to experience. Pass the wisdom down to the younger ages so that way they don't go through the things that we are going through, right? Because think about it like this. If we're having a battle within ourselves with the feminist culture and being emasculated and having our roles basically taken away from us, what do you think the youth is going through? What do we think the teens are going through as they're battling these things too? And they're battling these things with less weapons in their toolbox than we got, right? We kind of been through the ringer a little bit, so we kind of know, okay, this is what we got to do here, this is what we got to do here. They don't have that, and so we have to give that to them. We have to take time out of our day, our busy schedules, to be able to mentor the youth, because if we want a stronger society later, we have to give that to the young men now. And then we have to also teach them what it means to be a husband. But then we have to also, hey, man, you can't have a low expectation for your wife. When you pick the woman for your future, when you pick the one you want to spend your life with, don't take that lightly. We impart that wisdom up on the youth to where they can kind of start to see, okay, this ain't worth it. This ain't worth it. And I mean, just like I tell young dudes, I'm like, at the end of the day, build yourself, love yourself, and grow yourself. Personal development is key. So we need to work on developing ourselves, growing together, being in community with men. Go hunting with your buddies, go fishing, whatever. I mean, go watch the game, play Call of Duty. Some of my boys play Call of Duty. They get to talk and mess on the mics. That's what men do. Men are all about the team sports, team activities. We're competitive, but we like to compete in a team. Like, we're cool competing in a team. We don't need to be by ourselves. Like, even in a with boxers, you got your coach in the corner. You got your cut man over there too. That's a team. Even though there's one man that's out there boxing in the ring, that's still a team. And so competing with teams and understanding that we have that team mindset, that camaraderie that comes with it, like, we need to bask in that, because that's the type of stuff that manly men do, right? So we need to continue doing that. Don't change. We don't need to become coffee shop bros and do whatever women are doing just because women want us to do it and they want us to be in touch with our feelings. We don't. We are of action. Men love action. We're not super Philly all the time. That's just not us. But we do have those moments. And when we have those moments, it's typically when we're out there with our boys doing something. I know me and my boys get together, man. We're acting a fool. But those are the times when you get to build that masculinity. You get to build that base. And we need more of that. We need more men building that base. Right? It's hard to do it on your own. So we find it with the sense of community. So we find that with being around other men that are like us, other men that have that think like other men in your realm. Like, if you're married, hang out with some married dudes, right? If you're a Christian, hang out with some Christian dudes. If you're you love football, hang out with some dudes that love football, right? If you like basketball, hang out with some guys that like basketball, right? Hang out with guys in those fields, in those realms, and build those relationships, because those relationships help build you. Right? You get something out of it too. And so I think that's what we have to do as men. We have to get back together. We have to start to have community with each other. We have to have conversation with each other. Teach the youth what to look for. Like, if you've been through the ringer and you've been through divorces, tell the next young man, this is what the struggle was right here. Maybe you picked the wrong person. Maybe you went in it with the wrong mindset. But build strength. That way, when the battle comes, and if somebody wants to emasculate the man, he's still got something to stand on. It's going to take a whole lot of work to bring him all the way down. Because that's the goal. We don't want men to be brought all the way down. That's kind of my motivational speech at the end of my emasculation podcast. We don't want men to be brought all the way down. We need strong men in the community. We need strong leadership from men. We need men to be the protectors that we are. We need men to be the providers that we are. We need men to be the warriors that we are. Men that hoorah stuff that gets you hyped up. Get your boys hyped up. Let's get the young men hyped up. And stop all the battling, all the fighting, and all that jazz, because we're fighting amongst ourselves while the world is fighting against us as men. And we have to stand together. At some point, we're going to have to stand together, because at some point, it's going to come to our front door. And I think we all know that day is coming. But we just kind of bask around it and act like it ain't there. It's coming. Like, a war on men is happening before our very eyes. And we have to stand firm. We have to be immovable together. But that ends my emasculation podcast. If you're going through it, guys, if you're going through this phase with your woman, try to have a conversation. Don't just quit. Don't just give up like that just because you're going through it. If you're at the bottom of the barrel, you're at rock bottom. Like, it's all been taken away. I'm gonna put my email down at the bottom. Shoot me an email. Let's have a conversation. If you're at the bottom of the barrel, you've been emasculated to the point where it's like, man, I can't get up. It's hard to get up. It's hard to figure out where to start from. I will poke my email in the bottom. Shoot me an email. Okay. Again, if you guys like our stuff, please subscribe, like, share, comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you want to hear something else. I put a lot of study into my podcast before I even come out here and talk to you guys. I do a lot of back study. That's the reason my original goal is to post 4 or 5 a week, but I've only been able to get like 2 or 3 because I don't want to give you guys stuff that ain't got no substance to it, right? I'm going to do the work. I'm going to go dig in. I'm going to find out what works, what doesn't work, and I'm going to give you guys the real. This is GT the Vibe Podcast again. I'm out.